Are you one of those people who gets in the hot seat and you fall apart, you come undone? Do you forget everything that you knew about yourself, the company, everything that's in your application and resume? Is that you? If that's you, then hang in there. We're going to dig in. I'm going to help you out. All right, so we're talking about interviewing this week. Last week we talked about resume building. We ran through that. I'm going to go over some tips, some do's, some don'ts, and give you some little techniques, some inside information on resume building. On interviewing. Sorry about that. All right, so interviewing. Let's get right into it. I have a presentation here for us to look at. So just follow along if you can. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment, and I'll get back with you and let you know the answer to that question if I'm able to answer. All right, so interviewing, here we are. So are you a nervous interview person? Do you have a hard time doing interviews? I know a lot of people do. They go in there, palms are sweating and, fidgeting in the chair and all that kind of stuff, man. Well, we're gonna break some of this interviewing down today and make it a little bit easier for you as you move forward, okay? So let's look at this here. So preparation for your interviewing. So you want to customize your spiel. It's also called a 30-second commercial. So basically what that is a technique on how to answer the question that you're always going to get in an interview. The first question they're always going to ask you is, tell me about yourself, okay? So they're looking for certain things when they ask you this question. They're not really asking, where were you born and raised? What are your favorite foods and hobbies and things like that? They don't want to know all that. They don't even care to know really about your marital status, how many children you have. That kind of stuff is not really what they're asking about, okay? So they're talking about certain core things that give them a lot of information about you, and it should line up with your resume and your cover letter. So they really want to know what your skills and your experiences are. That's what they're really asking about, okay? So there's a way to go about answering that question, all right? And so what you will need to do is take some time to write down some of those skills and traits that you have. Write down your work history. Think about some of the companies that you really perform very well at, some of those specialized skills that you have, some of the training that you have, some of the licensing and certifications that you have. Those are the things they want to hear about. They want to hear about what your next steps are with those experiences that you have and those skills that you have. What are you planning to do with that? They want to know how can they monetize your skills, your talents, your abilities, and your experience, okay? Like I told you before, whenever you're interviewing, this is a business transaction. You are selling this company your time, skills, and ability, and your experience for compensation, okay? And so that's what they're in the market for, is your skills and your experience. That's what they're asking for, all right? You also want to customize your responses because they're going to be asking you some questions, and the questions they're asking are tailor-made for the interview process. A lot of places have scripted interview questions that they have to ask, right? I know we had about 20 questions we would ask in interviews, all right? So everyone had to go through those same questions. We take notes about according to how you responded to those questions, okay? But those questions are designed to open you up and to glean information out of you, okay? So you have to understand that, all right? So you want to have responses that you've tailor-made, you've prepared, because it shows that you're prepared. It makes you even more confident when you go into an interview and you already know what you're going to say if they say this, okay? It makes you a lot more confident. And we're going to look at some examples later on of what that looks like when a person's prepared versus unprepared, okay? So also you want to do some company research, right? I just always tell people, like, when you go to an interview, if you're sitting in that person's chair and you don't know anything about the company, they're going to think you're wasting their time. And you're going to come off desperate. Like, why are you really here, right? Are you here because you want to work with this company and fit into our corporate culture? You identify with something about our business? Or are you just here for a paycheck, all right? Because if you are here for a paycheck, they don't really want you anyway because you're looking for the biggest buck you can get. They're looking for an employee who's going to be a part of the company for years to come. And so you're already shooting yourself in the foot in that instance, okay? So also, you want to arrive about 10 to 15 minutes early. Not really much more than that, okay? But arriving 10 to 15 minutes early gives you some time to kind of calm down, relax, to get some of those jitters out. You know what I mean? All right. Now, also with that 10 to 15 minutes of early arrival time, you have to make sure that you understand that your interview begins in the parking lot. Okay, so you need to exercise some parking lot etiquette. Okay, don't pull up with music blaring. Uh, you gotta be careful about how you show up because people are paying attention. Okay, you might be driving past the person's office that you're going to be interviewing with while you're bumping your favorite hit song or whatever, and it may be something that they're not really into, right? And so you have to think about that kind of stuff. All right. Also, you got to have some lobby etiquette. Sorry about that. So the lobby etiquette. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about when you're sitting in the lobby waiting to see the person that you're going to interview with. The receptionist is watching you. The people walking past you, saying good morning to you, and all that. They are paying attention to you, right? But specifically, the receptionist is paying attention to you. The receptionist is a part of HR, right? So their antennas are always up watching people as they come and go and they interact. Okay. So you have to be mindful of that. There's people coming by and they're saying good morning. If you're not a morning person, you got to do your best not to be grumpy. You got to be polite, sit up straight, not fidgeting, not on your phone scrolling and listening to videos or, music or whatever that you probably shouldn't be doing. It's not appropriate at that time, right? So you want to come off as focused, prepared, relaxed. So you want to make sure that you are modeling that when you're in the lobby. Okay. So greet the receptionist again because the receptionist is part of HR, and so that person also it can be a determining factor if you get the job or not. Also, because once the hiring manager has interviewed with you, they're likely to walk you out, tell you goodbye, but upon walking you out and seeing you away, they may turn to the receptionist and say, what do you think about that person? Now, this is the receptionist who's been watching you. If you came 20, 30 minutes early, they've been watching you in the lobby the whole time. They watch how you interact. They listen to how you talk. They watch your mannerisms and body language. So you have to be careful about that. Make sure your receptionist becomes your friend. All right. So in the interview, you want to focus on your skills and your strengths because again, that's what we're in business for. We're in business. We're in this business transaction, selling our skills and our experience to them. Okay. So that's what we want to focus on. Keep your answers work related. We don't want to talk about anything that's outside of work really because I'm here to work. I'm not here to be your best friend and all that. I'm here to work. So we want to make sure our answers are work related. Ask questions. So this is one that I've heard a lot of HR executives say that when a person doesn't ask questions, they don't get the job. You can have all the skills, you can have all the qualifications and all the experiences, but sometimes because you don't ask questions, you seem like you're not interested in working there. And so they don't have time for you. Okay, I've literally heard HR executives say that a person doesn't ask questions, I take the resume, drop it in the trash. And you don't want that to be you, okay? All right, so close the deal. So that means just ask. Ask what's the next step? Can I follow up with you? Okay, make sure you do that because if you're not, you're still seeming like you don't really want the job. Okay, so be mindful of that. Always ask for the deal. Close the deal that way. All right, another thing. This is a little tip that will help you stand out from the rest of the people, the rest of the applicants, and the rest of the people interviewing. Okay, so this is like a sneaky little trick, but it works. All right, and it's an old school thing. But after you interview, send them a thank you card. 24 hours later, maybe 48, send them a thank you card. Or go down and take the card to the hiring manager or drop it off with the HR, the representative, the receptionist there at the front desk. If he's not available, he or she's not available, leave it with them, right? Why are we doing this? Because this is going to cause that person to, first of all, it's making you likable. And something that I've learned from a HR exec is that people do things for people they like. Okay, so it makes you likable. It's flattering, and people like to be flattered. And it shows you that you appreciated their time, you valued their time speaking with them, so you take them serious, right? And so it's just a nice little touch. But also what it does is that person is going to keep that thank you card, and they're most likely going to put it with your resume and application. Okay, well, your resume. Uh, and I've had HR people tell me that they kept a drawer with all the thank you cards and the thank you letters and things like that from interviewees. They kept them. And I'm talking people who have been in the business for 30 years and they had 30 years worth of thank you cards, and they still have them and they're retired. That's how much of impact that makes. Okay, so don't sleep on the thank you card. Utilize it to your advantage. All right, some of the do's and the don'ts. Okay, so make good eye contact. We do want to do that. We do want to bring extra resumes. Sometimes a person will pretend like they didn't get your resume to see if you were prepared. And a lot of times, if you've been to an interview, you see on the desk, there's a lot of stuff on the desk. They're kind of disorganized, or they're working. And so they have a lot of papers on the desk. They might have actually misplaced it. And if they have actually misplaced it, how much better does that make you look as a candidate to say, oh, I got you right here. I got a couple more right here. Okay. And plus, you don't know when you walk into the interview if you're going to interview with one person or you're going to be interviewing with 3 or 4 people. And so it's always good to have a little extra just to spread around in case. Okay. Answer truthfully but briefly. You don't want to start digging a rabbit hole, because if you start doing that, you're going to get off track and you're going to be really speaking to things that they didn't even ask. Okay, so keep them very brief. All right, give examples whenever you can. Always give examples. And so if they ask you a question, you answer the question, but then you follow it up with an example, because what they're trying to see is, how do you operate? How do you think? How do you feel? That's what they're trying to see. So you need to give them a very good conceptualization of how you operate, how you function in the workplace. Okay. All right. So do show off your company research again, because that's going to be something that's going to separate you from other people. When they ask you the question like, why do you want to work here? You should have an answer. And it shouldn't be, well, just I like the company. Why do you like the company? Because they're going to follow up with questions, because they're asking, they want certain information, right? So if you can say that, oh man, I've noticed it in the last 5 years, you guys have grown by 20%, and you've knocked out your competitors, or whatever, or I believe in your core values and your mission statement, those type of things, the vision of this company, those things stand out when they hear that, because most people don't really do the research. They don't really know the company they're going to interview with. They're just looking for a job, right? Especially right now with COVID-19, how everybody's looking for work right now. These are things that are going to make you stand out and make you a little bit more palatable to the person that you're interviewing with. All right, take some notes. It's always good to take a notepad in there and take notes, because it shows that you're interested, you're organized, you're focused, and it shows leadership qualities as well. So always take some notes. Do not smoke before the interview, right? Don't even smoke. Like, if you're gonna smoke at home, take a shower, get ready. Don't go in there smelling like smoke, right? Reason being is because, for one, the company may be a tobacco-free place, right? And so we all know how it is when you smoke cigarettes. You got to get that fix every 15, 20 minutes. You might feel like you need a cigarette. When I used to smoke, I know I used to want that fix. I used to want to get that every chance I could get, right? And so sometimes you try to squeeze out an extra break or something like that, right? And that seems good to you, but to an employer, it's like, hey, this person can't focus because they're too busy trying to smoke, right? And so that may lead to them to have a different concept about who you really are, right? About your character. And so it's not fair, but that's just the way it is. Another reason is with that workplace being tobacco free, if that's the case, like many places are, then that would be a violation of their policy. And so if you're already showing them that you smoke, then that may make them think, well, he may violate our policy here, or he or she, right? Besides that is, you don't know if this person is allergic to the smell of smoke, or they have asthma. They're going to walk into this place and they're going to be thinking about that in the interview. It could be a distraction, right? I've had people who said that they interviewed with a person and they thought that the person had been smoking weed marijuana in the parking lot, right? But the person was actually smoking cigarettes, and the person was smoking like a stale pack of cigarettes or whatever. But it came across differently because this person's sense of smell was a little bit different. And so they smelled marijuana, when it was actually tobacco, right? And so that just ruin everything for that person. Okay, so that's a good reason why not to smoke before you go into an interview. Don't act desperate again, because if you're looking desperate for the job, then they're going to start thinking, okay, this person is looking for something. Okay, now what are they really looking for? They're going to ask you those questions to try to open you up to see if what you're looking for are the right things and if they can offer those things. But if you're looking for the biggest paycheck, or the best benefits or whatever, you might be killing yourself because they might not be offering that, right? So don't look desperate, okay? Because a desperate person, once they might feel like once you get this job, you may not be so content here, and so a desperate person is going to start looking for something else, okay? And they don't want to deal with that, okay? So don't discuss any personal issues, and the reason why is because you don't know this person, you don't know what their prejudices are, you don't really know them, so it's very dangerous to talk about personal issues. Some of the questions they will ask you are open-ended questions, and it's designed to open you up, and you will just answer the question, and you will unknowingly give them some information that they don't like, right? I was in an interview once, and so me and my colleagues were interviewing someone. So I was the only guy, and the rest were women, and we were interviewing a young man, and he great credentials, great energy, and all that, right? But he would talk, and one of the tricks in interviewing is I'll ask you a question, and I'll just shut up, and there'll be this awkward silence. Okay, well that's designed to make you feel kind of off put, and to make you feel like, well, maybe I didn't answer that right, or I didn't give enough information, or maybe they think I'm lying, right? So I need to clear this up. And so that happened to this young man. And he just went to talking, trying to recover because he thought he had messed up. He actually gave a great answer, but that just threw him off, right? But in doing that, after the interview, everyone talks and decides, okay, do we like this person or not, right? Once he left, they were all like, no. And one person said that, in interviews, there's always that one thing people say. And I always look for that one thing. And then he said that one thing. She didn't say what the one thing was, but it was something that she personally had a problem with, personally, right? And you would think as professionals that were focused on the job at hand and so on and so forth, it was a personal thing. And so for that reason, she said, it's a no for me, right? And it was 3 against 1. And so he didn't get the job. But had he only known just to be quiet, just to answer questions straightforward, don't offer any extra information, he would have been good, right? So be careful of that. Don't discuss any personal information. Don't ask about salary, benefits, or time off. Again, this is the first time you're sitting down talking to these people, and you're going to sound desperate if that's what you want to talk about, because it seems like that's the only reason why you wake up and go to work, right? So don't do that, okay? So don't mispronounce or misspell the person's name. Some people get very offended by that. If you know that you're interviewing someone and you can't remember how to spell the name or say the name, maybe they have a foreign name or something like that, or just a very eccentric name or whatnot. What you can do is you can always call HR before you interview, right? And you can ask them, you say, hey, I think I have an interview coming up this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the person's name is Mr. Galifa, and they'll correct you. Oh, Galifianakis. Oh, okay, yeah, Galifianakis. So now you know, right? And so you just don't want to tick the person off before you even get a chance to show them what you're bringing to the table. Okay. All right. So again, don't offer any negative information because you don't know this person's prejudices. You don't know how this person feels, what they've gone through in their own lives, because we all come to the table with our own frame of references. Okay. And so as unfair as it is, that's just the way it is, okay? So if you offer any information that's negative, it's going to be a blight against you, and it's really no one's fault but your own because you gave it to them, okay? So be careful of that. And don't tell jokes because, again, you don't know this person, okay? I had a person who was in a training that I was giving, and he talked about how he went to an interview. He walks in, and instantly he sees all this KU paraphernalia, KU picture frames, KU coffee mugs, and things like that. And so he instantly thought, oh, great, I got this one. I'm a KU fan. He's a KU fan. Got this in the bag. And so as the interview started, right away he starts talking about KU, how he likes KU and the games and how they're winning and so on and so forth. And so he said the guy he was interviewing with got completely mad. So his face turned red. He was hot. And so he told the guy, the guy in my training, he told him that I hate KU. He said, I'm not even from Kansas. I think it's from like Arizona or somewhere, but he was not from Kansas. And so at that moment, the guy realized that he had just messed up. And from there, he said the interview went downhill. But he said the reason why he had all the KU paraphernalia is because his friends and family from here or whatever know he doesn't like it. And so they do it as a joke to get under his skin. So he hated KU that much. And so the interview didn't go well. And unfortunately, he didn't get the interview. He said, if I would have known, I would have never said anything about KU. So don't think you know these people. Don't offer any personal information, and don't be joking around because you don't know what's funny to this person. You don't know what their sense of humor is. You don't know what offends them. So you want to steer clear of all that kind of stuff. All right. And lastly, don't rely on your resume or your application to get you hired. Just because you got the qualifications doesn't mean anything. The application and the resume pique their interest. So they brought you in to interview with them to see who you really are, to see if who you are on paper lines up with who you are in real life. Okay. All right. So let's move forward here. So there's 3 types of interview questions. Okay. So you have a skill-based questions. All 3 of these questions, formal questions, have different focuses. So your skill-based questions, they focus on your skills and your ability. Okay. So your work history, what skills you actually utilize. Okay. And then you have your traditional skill questions. They're about you as a person and an employee. I just noticed a typo. Sorry. So it's about your employment and who you are as an employee and the person. Okay. And then you have your behavioral and situational questions, and these are going to be looking at your past behaviors because it's the best indicator for your future behavior. And then they're going to ask you situational questions where they're kind of focused on hypothetical future events, right? Just to see how you would perform. Sometimes mostly under pressure, in a tight spot. They want to know what you would do. And so really they're looking for, like, do you have leadership qualities? Or are you going to be level-headed on the job when something happens? That's what they're kind of looking at. So they're going to ask these questions in order to get certain answers and get certain information about you without asking you directly. Okay. So everything we're talking about is really about interview techniques, the skill of interviewing, because interviewing is a skill. And a lot of times we don't realize that. We just walk into interviews with no training, no understanding of how to exert some certain skills in interviewing, and then we fall short. Okay, but I got you. We're gonna get through this. All right. So traditional questions. So when I said that you want to reform your responses, so here's a list of some of the most used traditional questions in interviews. And so when I did trainings, what I would also always ask the gentlemen that I train, mostly men, right? I would tell them that you want to look at this list and find those things that stand out to you. When you are asked that question, you're like, ooh, I don't know how to answer that. Or you get nervous when I ask you that question, right? Maybe that question is related to a bad experience or whatever it is, right? But you have a difficulty answering that question. Well, those questions are the questions that you need to make responses for. And you need to go ahead and script them out. It's okay to script it out. You can write them down, put them in your notepad or your portfolio when you walk in, and you can actually read those questions off, right? You're not going to look crazy in the interview. You're actually going to look more prepared and ready. So don't worry about that. But if you see some of these asterisks on here, these are some of the ones that I highlighted just because I know they're used a lot in interviews. Like the very first one, why did you leave your last job? Right? That's a doozy. Like, what if you quit your job? Or you got fired? How do you answer those type of questions? Right? So it's good to have this all scripted out so that you don't foul up in the interview, right? Or maybe how would you evaluate your ability to deal with conflict? This is one I always use because I want people to understand you have to look at the structuring of the question because they're asking you something. If you're not really listening, for one, you're going to show them he's not really listening or she's not really listening, but you're also not answering the question. So with that question, it asks you, how would you evaluate your ability to deal with conflict? And whenever that question is asked, I always hear people say, I do pretty good. But the question is, how do you evaluate your ability to deal with conflict? It's not about how do you deal with, or do you feel like you do well with conflict? Or are you a conflicting type of person? You're a contentious person? Or how do you actually, how can you tell, or I'm in conflict and I need to assess it. I need to work through this to resolve it, because they're really trying to find out how do you resolve conflict, right? To make sure that they're not going to hire somebody who's going to go off and jump on somebody or something like that, right? So you want to look at these questions and write out some answers, okay? And try those answers out. Call somebody, say, hey man, if I ask you this, if I answer this question like this, how do you feel about it? You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure you have a friend or someone or family member who's been in management, or maybe you have a former boss that you're good with. You know, talk to them, because these people have been trained on interviewing, right? And so you can pick their brains and say, hey, well, how do you think I should answer this question? Now, what do you think about my answer to this question? Okay. But at least that way, when you go into the interview, you're more prepared. Okay. All right. So you see the one at the very bottom. What can you tell me about this company? Or why did you decide to seek a position with this company? This is where that company research comes in handy again, right? Because now you can speak to something specific, right? And that's going to make you shine when everybody else is just saying things like, well, you know, lost my job due to COVID, you know, and so I'm just, you know, I can't get back in my field, got laid off at Spirit, and, you know, I'm just looking for something, right? When you can say, well, you know, I was in Spirit, I got laid off, and that kind of forced me. I was happy there, you know. But when I started searching, I was looking for certain things, because when I Spirit, what I liked about Spirit was da 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 da, and then I seen that you guys, you have the same type of values, or you know, those type of things you want to be able to talk to, because that makes you look like, wow, this person really cares about what we do here. I think they really fit into our corporate culture. I'm gonna give them a shot. Okay. So let's look at some more questions. You also have your behavioral or situation-based questions. So these questions, again, are about your behaviors, past and future. Okay. And so these are the ones that they start with something like, tell me about a time when, or describe this, that, and the other, right? And so these questions, even with the traditional questions, they are very broad, open-ended questions. And so what happens is a lot of times people will answer a question, think or think that I have to answer according to uh, my background, you know, work-related background, my job experience, or whatever. That's not the case, because these questions, they might ask you a question like, tell me about a time when you planned something and things didn't go the way you expected. Like, that's a very broad question. It's not saying tell me a time, describe a time when you were at work and things didn't go the way you planned it, right? It's just in general, life in general. And so you can feel comfortable just answering that question, talking about an experience. But I would say this, I would not use a school related question. Like, I was in school, we were working on a group project and this didn't go right or whatever. Or it could be work, or it could be like family, you know. Like, I used to give an example of like a vacation. Like, maybe say you had planned a vacation, you know, and things just didn't go the way you expected it to go, or because it worked, it was the busy season, and out of nowhere, it just, you know, it got really, really busy, and so you had to make a hard decision to say to the family, hey, we got to push the vacation back because I need to be at work, right? That's a hard decision. It's something that's showing that you didn't plan this, but you recovered and you did the most responsible thing. You prioritized, and you faced it head on, right? But it's not anything bad or negative. You just didn't go on vacation at the time. But you also showed that work was important to you, right? And you didn't want to leave them short-staffed or whatnot. Okay, so you know, things like that. And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes the answers may not be your answer, right? But it may be something that you're like, if I was in that situation, this is what I would do. You know, you've had experiences when someone told you a story about something they went through, and you thought while they were talking, like, huh, well, if that was me, what I would have done is this or that, or I would have said this, I would have felt this way, right? And so you can very well utilize those experiences and put yourself in it and give it to the interviewer, right? Not saying that you're lying, but they're trying to find out how would you behave. Okay, so look at that list of questions, find the questions that you have a hard time answering, and then you want to script out answers for that. Okay, and again, you can write it down. You're not actually going to be reading it when you're in an interview anyway, because what's going to happen is your brain is going to, it's like muscle memory. Your brain is going to remember when you wrote that down. And so you're going to glance down, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's what I meant to say if they ask this. And so you're just going to run with it. If you get off track, you can look back down, and that'll help you stay on course. All right. So let's look at some more of these questions. We're going to talk about the methods to answering some of these behavioral and situational questions, because believe it or not, there are actual methods on how to answer these questions. Okay. All right. So the first one is called a STAR method. So that stands for the situation, the task, the action that you took, the result that came from it. Okay. And so you want to describe a situation or a dilemma at work or a task that you were given, and then something came up that kind of impeded that, and stood in the way of you getting it done, or just made it complicated. All right. And so then you're going to talk about the action that you took, right? Even if it was a group effort, it was a project you guys were working on as a staff or whatever, you want to talk about what you did in that process. Okay. All right. And then the results that you achieved. Okay. So what happened? How did that event end? What did you accomplish? And then what did you learn from that experience? Okay. And so you want to do like 3 or 4 of these. And if you got 3 or 4, pretty much any behavioral question they ask you, those 3 or 4 answers will work, right? And the beauty of that is that for interviews to come, you will have answers. And because they're such broad questions, those answers would pretty much fit almost any situation, okay? So that's why it's good to have those in your back pocket and keep them on deck whenever you go into an interview, okay? So then we have the SOAR method. So the SOAR method is just like the STAR method, except for it's talking about obstacles, okay? And how you got around the obstacle, how you eliminated the obstacle. So you have a situation, and you're gonna describe whatever that specific duty or responsibility that you had is, and then you're gonna talk about the actions that you took, how you take away or minimize that obstacle. That's what they're looking at. And then the result that came from it. So how did it help? How much did it help? Because you want to quantify. You want to show them what actually came of it, right? Because again, you're talking to a hiring manager, you're talking to a supervisor, and they're dealing with numbers and figures and quantities all the time. And so when you can quantify the impact of your decision making, which is a skill, right? Or you stepping up to the plate and exerting some leadership, which is a skill. So if you did those things in that situation, what result came from it? Right? Because now you're showcasing some of these skills that you didn't really talk about in your interview, or you did talk about. It's in your resume, it's in your summary qualifications. Now you're actually highlighting some of those skills. You're kind of showing them real world how you perform, right, under pressure in a tight spot, right? Okay. So now there's another situation we have, which is a felony. A lot of people have backgrounds, right? And so they're afraid to answer this question in an interview, right? Because we already think that, oh man, that means that if they know that I got this felony or this misdemeanor or whatever, I'm not a shoe-in for this position, right? Which is not necessarily true. Most companies, they get an incentive for hiring felons anyway, right? And they want to show themselves as an equal opportunity employer. And so it's not like you don't have a chance, right? But if you have a good, tight resume that shows your skills, your abilities, your qualifications, and your good, consistent work history, you already have an advantage. But when you ask this question, most people get tense, they get nervous, they feel defeated, and they get desperate, and some of them just give up. And an interviewer can tell. I've had HR people say when they ask the question, they noticed the person who was doing good. As we got closer and closer to that question, they got nervous. As soon as they asked the question, that person went from being confident to just like, man, it changes, right? Okay, so how do you answer the question? So we have a balance beam, right? So the idea is we want to outweigh the bad with the good. So we'll answer the question honestly, and we'll say like, well, it was in 2007. I was charged and convicted with da 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 da, right? We're not going to go into gory details. We're not going to do that, because if you do that, what you're going to do now is you're going to give them a conception about yourself that you may not ever be able to take away from them, right? So we're not going to tell them the details. We might say in 2007, I was charged and convicted with breaking and entering, but I'm not going to say, I broke in the house and I ran upstairs and I grabbed the husband out the bed and I pistol whipped him while I made the wife open the safe, because now you just painted the picture of a monster, right? And so you don't want to go into details, right? But you do want to say, okay, the details you do want to give is like the time, how much time you spent, when did you get caught, and when you were convicted. I'm sorry. But then you want to talk about what I call adding flesh to it, right? And because this is a psychological thing, right? And this is why I'm sharing it with you. So you want to talk about the things that happened. I went to jail. I served my time. I got out, did parole, or I had probation for a year. I walked that down. So you want to talk about why, since you were in there. So it's the since then, okay? So once you went to jail, what happened? Talk about the experience. I was young. I was misguided. I made some bad choices. I was going through some personal things in my life. It was, my dad had died, and I just never really recovered from that. I turned to alcohol, and from there, it just kind of went downhill. And I found myself hanging with the wrong crowd. And this night happened, and we stole a car and went joyriding and got caught and went to jail. But when I was in jail, I confronted myself. I was alone. First, I blamed everybody else for my choices, and it was everyone else's fault but my own. And then it hit me that it's me. It's me. I got to work on me, right? And so what I started doing since then, I started going to school. I finished high school. I got my GED. I even took some college courses in there. I got certified in HVAC, right? So you're showing that you've made some progress. You actually were correcting some of your wrongs, right? And so what you're doing by adding that flesh is you're humanizing yourself, your story, right? And you can continue on. Okay, so while I was in jail, I really started doing some soul searching. Maybe I found faith. You know what I mean? Or maybe I reconnected with my family who I've been hurting because I've been making bad choices, and there was a lot of distance between us. But I reconnected with them, right? Maybe I have children, and I really wasn't being in their life like I should have been. But this experience showed me how much I value them and how much value I have to them. And so we reconnected. Maybe I'm staying with my parents right now until I get on my feet. And so I'm looking for work so I can get on my feet, right? I volunteer. I volunteer. I serve in my church, or I volunteer down at the food pantry. You know what I mean? I help the homeless, or whatever it is that you do. I coach soccer or football. I go hang out at the Boys and Girls Club. I'm a mentor. Because what you're doing now is you are making this person not see you, the criminal, but see you, the person. And it's easier for them to deny the criminal the job, but it's harder to deny the child, the father, the mother, the community involved person. You know what I mean? Because if I don't give this person a job, then, well, maybe he'll never be able to provide, he or she will be able to provide for their families, or maybe they'll go back to that life of crime, or just maybe if they're not where they need to be at, those homeless people that they were trying to help, they won't be able to help. You know what I mean? So psychologically, it's harder for a person to deny, because they're not really denying you. At that point, they're denying your children, they're denying your family, the people who love you, the community that you serve. So you're adding flesh to it, okay? So what happens if you answer this question this way, and you talk about the since then things, and then that person wants to go back and says, they're going with the interview and you talk and they say, well, I understand all that, but, I just can't get over this conviction in 2007. Can you just give me a little bit more information about that? We'll go back through it again. Okay, we'll do the same spiel that, yes, in 2007, I was charged and convicted with whatever, right? When I went to jail, this happened. And since then, boom, 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 boom. So we'll do that a couple of times, right? But we're gonna enforce a 3-strike rule, right? So by the third time, if they go back to that, we're gonna just shake hands and say thank you for your time, because you don't want to work for a place like that. You don't want to work for that person anyway, because they're never gonna let that go. And so, what if something comes up missing in the office? You know, they might be inclined to think, well, I know what he or she was incarcerated for. Well, I just know that they were incarcerated, so they probably are the ones who did it, right? So you don't need that kind of pressure, right? And so plus they don't see the value in you. You're not there. They're not valuing you as a person, right? You're coming with skills and abilities, talents. You have a lot of values and assets you're bringing to the company. You know what I mean, for them to utilize. And so if they can't see that, and they're focused on your past, then you don't want to be there. Okay. All right. So now you're also going to ask questions. You have to ask questions in the interview. Never leave the interview without asking questions. Ask a couple questions. Write the questions down so that when you go into the interview, you already have them prepared. But ask questions throughout the interview as well. That's what I always do, because what it does is it takes some of the onus off of you, some of that pressure off of you, when it kind of turns it around on them, right? So that gives you a chance to breathe and relax and regroup, to think about some of the things you prepare for. If you're a nervous person, it really takes some of the pressure off of you while they're talking. Okay. Plus, it gives you insight. Okay. All right. So here's a list of some very good questions that you can ask in an interview, and you can take those questions. You can use those questions if you want, or you can use that as a catalyst to come up with your own questions. But always have a couple questions. Okay. And a couple of my favorites is, why do you like working here? Because that's gonna make them open up and share their experiences working there, right? And it may be something that you don't like, or it may be something that you do like, right? So it's gonna give you some insight. All right. And another one, the very last one, is very, very important. People get scared to ask this question, but you want to ask them, what is there? Are there any concerns or questions that you have about my skills, my abilities, or my experience, right? Because what this does is you'll be able to tell if they weren't pleased with something that you said, or they just felt like you got close but really didn't hit the mark. So it gives you a chance to recover. Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah. Oh, but see, I forgot to tell you about da 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 da. Right. So it gives you a chance to recover. All right. So what can you tell me about a typical day in this position? That's going to help you know what kind of, is it going to be a fast-paced job, slow-paced job? You know, how much downtime do you have? Is there any downtime? Do you get breaks? I've heard people say they work at places they don't get breaks. That's against the law, but people will do it because they're desperate for work, right? If they know that, then you know you're signing up for it. You can't be mad later, right? Or who is the ideal employee? Because what if the ideal employee to these people are a person who works the whole 8 hour shift, does his job, her job, she does his job as well, and for the same amount of pay, right? No pay increase, uh, doesn't get any breaks. You know what I mean? First person here, last person to leave. You know, that person's going to be obviously wore out. You know what I mean? But is that you, right? So you want to be able to ask those questions so you know. Like for me, when I was in aircraft, I remember when I got offered a job at Spirit, they talked to me about mandatory uh, working, like mandatory weekend. Like you're talking like for months, you working 7 days a week. Nah, it's not for me, right? And I know me, and it's okay that that's what they do, but I just can't do it because I don't see the point of working 7 days a week for 3-4 months straight and wearing myself out. No, I'm not gonna do it, right? But if I didn't ask questions, like, what does that look like? What does overtime look like here? Do you guys ever have mandatory overtime? You know what I mean? That lets me know right there it's not for me, right? Okay, so there you go. Those are some of the questions. Those are some of the interview tips and tricks. Okay, so now let's actually look at some. We're gonna look at some actual interviews. Okay, so um, first of all, what I want to do is talk about making the first impression. Okay, and that's it's so important to make the best first impression that you can, right? But you also have to understand that you're dealing with people with prejudices. You know, you're dealing with people's own frame of references, and so your first impression is comprised of a lot of things. It's comprised of what you talk, how you talk, your body language, your posture, how you dress, you know, how you carry yourself, all those things. People can pick up so much from that. And most of it they pick up from your body language and your appearance, right? Things like 55% of your first impression is based on your body language and appearance, right? And hygiene, you know, that goes with the body butter. And then you have, you know, your the influx of your voice, the inflection of your voice, right? That's more important than the words you use, right? Than your vocabulary, right? Because you can be a straight A student with 3 master's degrees, and if you're from deep down south, you're gonna have some twang. You're gonna say words a little bit different from everybody else in your region, maybe, and they may think you that well, it's kind of slow or just not bright enough, right? So, but that they understand that that doesn't really add up. The vocabulary is not the issue, but I can tell a lot by the sound of your voice. You know what I mean? You know how it is when you see someone that you let borrow some money and you run into them like, hey man, you got that $20 you owe me? Man, bro, you already can tell because of how the voices sound. You already know he set me up for a long story, right? And I'm not gonna give my $20, right? They can also tell that when they ask you questions in the interview, right? And so you want to think about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Uh, think about how you dress, how you come across. You know, if you got piercings, tattoos, and all that kind of stuff, that stuff is fine nowadays. But you have to understand that you're dealing with a person's frame of reference and their perspective. And so you kind of gotta have, you're gonna have something against you. It could just be this, like a beard, right? Um, it's okay, but back in the days, it wasn't okay, and still today, some places don't like it. You know, if you notice, like like firefighters or cops or whatever, you won't see many of them with facial hair, right? So that matters. You won't see them having tattoos visible. You know what I mean? Because the company, the organization doesn't approve or it doesn't fit the company's culture or whatnot. And so you got to think about that kind of stuff, right? But even with the first impressions, the things we talked about, like talking about the benefits right away, that leaves an impression. It makes an impression. You know, if you're nervous, that leaves an impression. Like if you're fidgeting around in your chair and all that, you know, you may be nervous, but that person may assume it's something else. They may think maybe this person's going through withdrawal. You know, is this person intoxicated? Are they high? You know, what's really going on? No, don't have a criminal background because now I'm really going to be thinking like, what is this person? What's wrong with this person, right? Um, eye contact in the interview. So I mentioned that earlier, but I want to just talk about it a little bit more. So with eye contact, there is a recommended amount of eye contact, and it's about 80 to 85%. So that means you want to break eye contact every so often, right? Because again, you're dealing with a person, you're dealing with the brain, the psyche of a person, right? And so if you're staring me down, especially for us men, because we've been taught since we were little kids to always look a person in the eye when you're talking to them. That's what men do, right? But that's okay on the playground, I guess, or you know, in confrontation or something like that. You know what I mean? But in the real world, if you're interviewing with a lady behind the desk and you're in proximity, close to her, and you're giving 1,000-yard stare, and you're this big burly guy, you know, that may make her feel uncomfortable, right? It may make a person start thinking like, are they mad? Are they crazy? Are they even paying attention? Like, what's going on here, right? So you want to break eye contact because your brain is saying it doesn't seem normal to never break eye contact. That's strange to the brain. You know, it's seen on TV and everywhere that people break eye contact. People blink, so it's okay to blink. They're not going to think, oh, he's not paying attention, right? It's going to make them feel a little bit more comfortable, okay? And so that is a recommended amount of eye contact, all right? So another thing for us gentlemen, for sure, like let's say you are going to interview with a woman, and so you go in, You go to shake her hand. She's going to shake your hand and speak to you, introduce herself. You don't want to give her the Vulcan death grip when you shake her hand. We're not going to do the Donald Trump and see who's the strongest person, right? Because that can seem like you're trying to exert dominance. And I know as men, we're taught when you shake hands, you shake firm and hard. But that's kind of archaic thinking, and it doesn't translate well in the professional world. Okay, but we're not going to do the old maid handshake either, because she's worked hard to get where she's at. She deserves the respect that she's earned, right? So she deserves it from you as well. Okay, and you don't want to make a person feel like you're trying to make yourself more superior or sexist or whatever, right? And again, you don't know a frame of reference. What if she grew up in a very domineering household? Her dad was very domineering, and her brothers picked on her all the time. You may be setting yourself up for failure just in how you approach it, right? Okay, so let's get into an example. It's going to be a quick video. I'm going to show you some examples of first impressions and how they look and how they come across. And then we're actually going to take a look at some actual mock interviews, okay? So let's get into that right quick. And I'll join you back in just a second.
Welcome to 30 Seconds to Impress. Did you know that studies have shown that the outcome of an interview can be predicted within the first 15 seconds? This means that when it comes to interviewing, first impressions matter. We gave our actors 30 seconds to play the role of a potential candidate. Based on first impressions, who would you hire?
Hi.
Hello. Are you Anthony?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Hello.
Yes, I
Nice
am.
to meet you. I'm Lauren.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I need to put myself together. I'm sorry. I'm late. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. All right. Yeah. Have a seat. I have your resume here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay. Yeah. I have salary. A question for you too.
Okay.
Your salary and vacation time.
Okay. Well, usually we discuss that later on in the interview process, but hi, come on in. Are you Marissa?
Oh, hey, yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right, so I have your resume here that you sent in, and I'm just going to ask you
Yes,
some
oh my gosh, since I sent you that, I also have done so much more. I've been volunteering, I even have a part-time job. It's just so great.
Oh, well, that is fantastic. Do you have an updated resume for me or anything?
Oh, no, we can just talk about it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's get started then. Hi, come on in.
Hi.
Are you Krista?
Good.
Are you Krista?
Yep.
Okay, great. Have a seat right here. Okay, so I have your resume here that you sent in earlier. And so what's going to happen is I have some questions for you, and then at the end, you can ask me some questions, and I will answer your questions for you if you have anything you want to ask me. Okay. So let's get started. All right. Hi, come on in.
Hi.
Are you Todd?
I am Todd.
Hi, Todd. I'm Lauren.
Hi, Lauren. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Have a seat.
Did you get the resume I sent in?
I did. I have it right here.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much for sending it. We appreciate it. So I have had a chance to review your resume. And so what's going to happen today is I have some questions for you that I'd like you to answer. And then at the end, you're going to have a chance to ask me some questions if you would like.
Okay, great.
All right, so let's get started.
Okay, Mom, I gotta go. I'm in my interview right now. Yes, right now. Okay, I'll call you back. Bye.
Hi, come in.
Hi.
Are you Caitlin?
Yes, I am.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Have a seat right here. Okay. So I have your resume here, and I have some questions for you. And then at the end, you'll get a chance to ask me any questions that you might have about the position. Okay. All right, so let's get started.
Hello?
Hi, come on in. Hello, are you Steven?
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Lauren. Come on in, have a seat right here. Okay, so Steven, I have your resume here that you sent ahead of time. So what we're going to do is I have some questions for you. And then at the end, you'll get a chance to ask me some questions if you'd like. All right. So let's get started here. Anthony comes in and he is already running late, which is kind of strike one. And then he hands me his portfolio so he can fix his tie, which is really quite awkward. I'm not really sure what to do with it. And then after I sit down and start explaining how the interview process is going to work, he interrupts me in order to ask how much he's going to get paid and how many vacation days he'll get, which is very inappropriate. And at this point, I don't even want to continue the interview. Marissa comes in and is obviously very enthusiastic to be there. She seems pretty friendly, a little bit over the top, but not something that would count her out entirely. However, then when I begin to explain the process, she interrupts me in order to tell me that she's done a lot more things that aren't listed on her resume. However, when I ask her for an updated resume, she doesn't have anything with her and says that we can just talk about it, which is pretty unprofessional. From the second Krista enters the room, I can tell she is not with it. When I ask who she is, she says good, which makes me have to ask her again. Obviously, she was not listening the first time. Then, when she sits down, she looks all around the room and doesn't make eye contact with me at all. It seems like she really just doesn't want to be there or doesn't care. Also, her gaudy jewelry is really distracting. Todd makes a good impression right off the bat. He's dressed professionally in a suit and tie, and he shakes my hand firmly. When I offer him a seat, he asks me if I received his resume, which is fine. But the real clincher is that when I'm explaining how the process is going to work, he's looking at me, making eye contact, nodding, and I can tell he's really listening to what I'm saying. He might not be the most friendly candidate, but he's definitely professional. Caitlin enters the scene, and I'm not sure if she thinks I can't hear her because she's still in the hallway, but she's hanging up with her mom, which makes her seem really immature. Also, she's wearing a cute outfit, but it's really not formal enough for an interview. Then I notice she has a huge flowered bag, which she puts on the table, which is very distracting. When she sits down, she assumes a very relaxed position, and she starts sipping her coffee, and overall, she just seems way too comfortable. Instead of knocking on my door, Stephen pokes his head in shyly. Then when he enters, I notice he's wearing a polo shirt with an eagle on it. That's not quite professional, Stephen. Then he gives me a really limp deadfish handshake and sits down to start the interview. He crosses his arms in a really standoffish gesture and starts shaking his legs back and forth. I can tell he's really, really nervous, so I feel kind of bad for him, but that doesn't make me want to hire him. Based on what I've seen so far, Todd is the best candidate and gets the job. Remember, always arrive early, dress professionally, give a firm handshake, be confident, and smile. For more interviewing tips or to schedule your own mock interview, contact Uville's Career Services Center.
All right, there you have it. So those are some examples of first impressions, and some of them are kind of comical, but it rings true, right? So you got to be careful of how you're dressed, your mannerisms. Are you paying attention? Are you conveying that you're paying attention with that eye contact? Like she mentioned, the nodding of the head. You know, when you're taking notes, that's showing that you're paying attention, and all those things are making that interviewer feel like their time is valued. And so you see the guy asking about the benefits, and you heard a response to, hey, I didn't even want to continue their interview at that point, right? And so that's why you don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, okay? There is a professional standard, and I tell people, like, as long as you know the professional standards, those margins, and you stay right there between those margins, you're good, right? When you start to go a little too far right, too far left, then you're kind of falling off there, right? But otherwise, you're good to go. All right. So we talked about various things you do in interviews, right? We talked about that spiel, that 30-second commercial, right? And so we're going to look at a mock interview. And the first one I'm going to show you was a person who is prepared. And you can tell this person was prepared. They studied, they researched. You're going to be able to see that, right? You're also going to notice this person has a thick accent, right? But it doesn't take away from her qualifications, her education level, her skill set. It doesn't affect that any, you know. The unfortunate thing about this video is you're going to hear the last bit of this person's 30-second spiel, right? So this 30-second spiel is just like an elevator speech, right? And so what happens is when they ask you to tell me about yourself, they want to know, okay, yeah, my name is Jay, and I've been in this industry for this many years. I got these kind of skills, and the skills they're talking about is going to be your hard technical and your soft skills, right? And so your hard skills are going to be those skills that are like the types of function of the job. So maybe you are a machinist, maybe you drove a truck, CDL, or maybe you use power tools. Those type of things are the hard skills, right? The construction, the maintenance jobs type stuff, you know what I mean? And then you're going to have your technical skills, which are your licensing, your certificates, any type of software, media related, or technological type things. Those are your technical skills. And then you also have your soft skills, and the soft skills are what makes you likable, right? These are the things like I'm a dependable person, reliable, I'm punctual, a team player, goal oriented. You know what I mean? Those are things that that shine through and shows your real character. And so you want to have that in the mix. Okay. All right. So you're going to see that in her 30-second spiel, she's actually giving that. And so you're going to hear that, and it comes across a lot better because the reason why you want to use that is because it sets the tone for the rest of the interview, right? And it answers a lot of the questions that the interviewer might ask otherwise, right? And so plus you wanted to kind of correspond, not kind of, but you do want to correspond to some of your qualifications on your resume, right? Because that some of your qualifications basically is your 30-second spiel, right? And 30 seconds is just loose terminology, just saying like it's a quick reference to your skills, experiences, and qualifications, right? And so you want it to line up to some of your qualifications on your resume. You don't want it to be word for word exactly what you said, because at this point you're just regurgitating the same information, and the interviewer is going to be keen enough to realize that's what you're doing, right? And so it made it seem like this is all fake, because you can put anything on paper, right? But it also shows you that you know yourself. You know what value you have, and that's important, right? Because I might come to you and say, hey, there's a vacancy for a supervisory position. Would you like it? Now, you might want it because of the pay, but then you may not really have the skill sets for that job, and you don't know that, then you're going to put yourself in a bad position. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? The money is good. I like that. The advancement sounds good, but I just don't think that lines up with me, or but if you don't even have those, if you don't even talk about those qualities that you have, you may not even be considered for leadership anyway. So it's good to highlight that kind of stuff in your 30-second spiel when they ask you, tell me about yourself, okay? So you're going to see this interview. It's actually from a college. These people are interviewing for a medical type of job in healthcare. It's going to be like 2 or 3 interviews we're going to look at, but this first person is going to be very well prepared. And I want you to pay attention to some of the things that you noticed that, she could have did better there, or she did really good here. But put yourself in those shoes. Like, how would you have answered? Right? How would you deal with this question or that question? And also point this out. In interviews, you want to look at the line of questioning that the interviewer is giving you, because they're asking questions leading up to something. So they're trying to get to a certain destination when they ask these questions, right? And so they're asking certain things, and they keep asking it is because not really answered it fully. They're not satisfied with the answer, right? And so we'll also see an example of that, okay? So that's why having rehearsed answers are great. It speeds up the whole process. It makes it a little bit more easy for you. You become more relaxed, which makes you shine through a little even more, right? So let's look at this first interview real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss
it. And I'm good at computer skills and medical terminology.
I noticed on your resume that your expected graduation date is 2016.
Yes, sir.
All right. If you were to receive this job, would you still be able to continue your education?
Yes, sir.
So it wouldn't cause any issues or problems?
No.
All right. All right. Also, looking at your resume, I see that you have a CNA licensure.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Is there a reason you're not a CNA currently, or?
I'm a CNA currently.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right, cool. Do you think that experience would transfer over into this job?
I think this experience will, because it helped me understand HIPAA a lot better too. Let me know that privacy is a big part of people's confidentiality.
I also noticed you put you're familiar with ICD-10. Can you tell me what that stands for?
ICD-10 is the new version of ICD-9. It's the procedure codes used when a patient comes in to go on the CMS 1500 for the organizations to get paid.
All right. Tell me how your education at Richmond Community College and how your work experience is preparing you for this job.
RCC has prepared me for this job because it's helped me with related courses such as medical law and ethics, human resource management, different things that'll teach me about working in the healthcare field that I'm going in. And along with my job, like I said, HIPAA, it helped me learn the confidentiality of patients, the rules and regulations on how to work with other people, teamwork, being organized. That's how my CNA job helped me.
Do you consider yourself a team player, or do you work well with teams, or better working alone?
I work well with teams. I work alone too, but I can work well with teams too.
Mm-hmm. All right. Tell me, what is your greatest strength?
I think my greatest strength is probably being organized. I'm more organized than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, then tell me, what's your greatest weakness?
I think my greatest weakness will probably be communication.
Okay. And why would you say that?
I communicate. It's just getting people to understand what I'm saying.
Do you think that's because they're not listening, or because you need to convey the message?
I think I need to, convey the message a little stronger.
We've all had that happen. All right. It says that you got some work-based experience. You worked at Richmond County Health Department.
Yes, I did my co-op there.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you did there and how that would transfer and help you in this job?
Well, we scanned and saved files. I pretty much have to keep everything organized, up to date, like directories and resources. I helped the health department with some of their accreditation. Like I said, we save and scan files, get it over for accreditation, and we've went over grants. So that's helped me to learn more about this.
All right. Tell me, if I were to call your references or call people that know you that you didn't list as your references, what would they say about you?
I say I'm a positive person. I communicate well with other people. I'm very organized. I'm a good person.
Okay. That's it? All right. All right. In the job posting, it says one of the critical requirements is that you can work with DME or things relating to DME. Can you tell me what that stands for?
DME? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure at this moment. Sorry.
No problem. It says you have good computer skills. Can you tell me what makes you quantify that you have good computer skills?
I'm good at typing. I'm very excellent at typing.
How many words per minute?
I want to say 35 to 40 maybe a minute.
Right. Tell me your career plan. Tell me, if you were to get this job, what that means to you and what you have in store for the future.
I will continue to work this job, and I will continue going to school to get my bachelor's in healthcare management.
Would this job conflict with you being able to continue your education?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions for me?
I do. How did this job become open, and what is the ideal candidate for this job?
The job is open because we've promoted from within. The person that did this job previously has been promoted to a higher level, which we're very happy about. And the ideal candidate is someone that can come in and learn the job quickly, because we do have training, but as you know, the longer the training takes, the less money we make. So want somebody that learns quickly, is very customer service friendly, and can work well in an office environment, because in that environment you would deal with coworkers, customers, doctors, a lot of different styles, a lot of different people. So you have to be very flexible. Do you think you would be able to do that?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any other questions for me?
No, sir, I don't.
So if we were to offer you employment, it would not have any problem. It would not cause you any problems with still graduating in May of 2016.
No, sir.
Right. Well, if you have no more questions for me, that's all I have. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so that was an example of a pretty decent interview, right? So if you notice, when she started out talking, we caught the tail end of it, but she was actually giving her 30-second spiel, just that little elevator speech. She was talking about some of her skills and qualifications, right? So she didn't say what her hopes are to use those. So at the end of the interview, he asked, right? Because she already laid out what she's good at, what her qualifications are, right? Her experience are. But he wants to know, what is your plans with all that, okay? And so if she would have answered that in her spiel, he wouldn't have had to ask that question, right? So how does that look? You're on an interview, they're asking you questions, you're talking about your skills, your experiences, and all that. And you tell them, my hope is that I look forward to maybe getting with a company long term, da 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 da. Or I've heard people just say, I just wanted to be the best in the industry at what I do, or whatever. They want to know what your long term goal is and how they fit into that, right? And so by answering that, you kind of give them a good idea of what your expectations are of them and what they can expect from you. Okay. So there's some things in her interview that people point out. They'll point out that when it talked about her strength, that she talked about typing was she was her strong suit. She said she's very excellent at typing. When he asked, how much do you type? How many words? She said about 35, 40. That's average, right? But she sold it. She believed it. She recognized the value she has, right? But then she also kind of contradicted herself. People will point that out, that when he asked about the weakness, it was about communication. But later on, when he asked, what would your references say? That she said communication was one of her key points that she was good at, right? And it's okay. The thing is, she answered the question. She identified what her strengths were, and she identified what her weaknesses are. So when you're in an interview, you definitely want to be able to speak to that question. When they ask you about your strengths and weaknesses, people are quick to talk about their strengths, right, in that moment. But they get scared and nervous when it's time to answer that question about what's your greatest weakness, right? So I'm going to give you a tip on how to answer that. Here's a technique, right? So you want to talk about something called like a learn grow model, right? And so you're going to have an experience. You're going to talk about, let me give you an example. So let's say you're working a job, you're applying for a job, and you're going to be working like in a machine shop or something like that, right? You may say something like, well, public speaking is my greatest weakness, right? But you want to also show, what are you doing to improve that weakness, right? So maybe public speaking is my weakness, but I'm in school and I go to school part-time, and in my classes, I take it serious, and I'm aggressive and assertive about the giving speeches or presentations and all that. Or maybe you're actually taking some public speaking classes on the side to help you out. You know what I mean? Or maybe you go to church and you take the opportunity to have that testimony service time. You know what I mean? To be vocal. Maybe you're going out and being a little bit more sociable. And when you're in social places, public places, maybe you're speaking up more there. Or you're being more of an activist in the community. Things like that. That's showing that you're not allowing the weakness to stay a weakness, right? That you're actually improving yourself, right? Because you're able to identify, these are where I fall short, these weaknesses, and I want to improve that so I can be the best version of myself, right? And then so it's not just genuine when you say that kind of stuff. But then also you got to think about this. I said you're going to be working in a machine shop, right? You're applying for a machine shop job. Does public speaking have anything to do with machining? Not at all. And so you want to have answers that don't directly relate to the job that you're applying for, right? So let's say you are applying for a job and you're going to be like in customer service, or you're going to be working in an office, maybe like a clerical position, and you say your greatest weakness is that you don't type as much. You're not a good typer. Or you just shot yourself in the foot, because the basic function of this job is going to be you typing and doing data entry. That's going to be a problem, right? So you want to make sure it's unrelated to the actual job that you're applying for, okay? You don't want to say stuff that everybody else has said, you know what I mean? So don't give those generic answers, because that person has interviewed hundreds, possibly thousands people in their lifetime, in their professional career, and they've heard those generic answers before, okay? And so like stuff like, oh, I'm just too much of a perfectionist. Like they've heard that before. Don't say that, you know what I mean? Okay. And so identify your strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Um, notice the line of questioning that he asked her. I'll give you a moment to think about it. What was he constantly kind of driving at with her? Well, it was about her education, like her finishing college, right? So he was concerned, obviously, because he kept asking about it. How would you getting this job affect or impact your ability to graduate? So what he's concerned about is, will she give him more attention to school than work? You know, is the job going to have to compete with her education? You know, people don't go to college, pay money, spend all that time, and fight and stay up late and write papers and do all that kind of stuff to have it all washed away because I got to be at work. You know, people who in that situation will choose college, the investment they made in themselves over the job often, right? And so he understands that, and so he was driving that point home. He was asking that question because it was an area of concern to him. And so you need to be able to notice the line of questioning when you're in an interview so that you can actually speak to that situation, right? Okay, so that was a good interview. That was a decent interview. We're going to move forward and we're going to look at another interview. And to be honest with you, it's not that great, right? So if you're a nervous interviewer, this is you, right? And this is what it looks like when you're not prepared, right? And this is why I tell people to take your portfolio. You know, when you take your resume in there, if you got a little folder or portfolio or something like that, take your answers and your responses in there as well. Print off that job description that you originally looked at, that job post, the notes that you took on there that you marked up, and you know, use that as your company research right there in your portfolio, right? You're going to come across way more confident, way more prepared, and you're not wasting the interviewer's time because that gets on their nerves that you're wasting my time. You're not prepared to be here, you know. But the problem is that the interviewer still has to go through the interview. And if you make an interviewer sit through 15, 20 minutes of gut-wrenching, agonizing, boring, stale, just craziness, they're not going to hire you. Because you know what they're going to be thinking? If I hire this person, I have to deal with this person every day. So you want to make sure you come through very, very confident and prepared and not wasting their time. Okay, so let's look at this next interview real quick.
Thank you for coming in for the interview today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. First, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're applying for this job?
Okay. Am I with blank?
You do know who you are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell me, relax. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why you applied for this job.
Been going to school for healthcare management. I'll be graduating in May. I have my accounting certificate, and I think my level of education qualifies me.
Okay. Qualified. Do you want this job?
Yes.
All right. Tell me how your education at Richmond Community College prepares you for this job.
The classes that I've taken, the accounting, the healthcare management, financial classes, and all has prepared me for it.
Okay. I noticed on your resume you put that you're knowledgeable and familiar with CMS 1500.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what that is? What's that stand for?
What's it stand for? It has all the information of the patient that has come in, the date of the procedures, the calls, all their information, their insurance and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you're currently working at First Health?
Mm-hmm.
And you've worked there for how long?
Oh no, I'm doing co-ops there.
Co-op. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Tell me what you're doing there.
I'm working in outpatients. I check the patients in, getting them registered for their labs or the wound clinic.
Is that going well?
Mm-hmm. Really well. Learned a lot.
All right. Tell me, what is your greatest strength?
My greatest strength, I believe, is my qualifications that I have, my knowledge of the job.
And we have several applications of people that are qualified.
Mhm.
We don't interview anybody that's
I
not
know,
qualified.
yeah.
Tell me why. Tell me why we should hire you. Tell me what you got or what you have or what you bring that should make me want to hire you.
I feel that I would be the best person for the job.
So that's why. Tell me some things about yourself. Are you organized? Do you make a lot of mistakes? Have you had any issues with any disciplinary actions at any school or any?
No, I'm
work?
well organized. Communicate with others well. I work together with others well. I'm a fast-paced worker.
How do you handle pressure?
Fine.
Fine.
Even though not right now, but
All right. Tell me what your goals for the future are. If you were to get this job, tell me what your goals are and what you plan
my
to
goals.
achieve.
I plan to, if I was to get the job, to work as hard as I can to move myself up gradually.
Tell me what's your greatest weakness.
My greatest weakness. I'm not for sure.
So you don't think you have any, or you're not sure what it is?
No, I'm not for sure.
That's fine. All right, tell me about your biggest accomplishment in your co-op. Tell me something you've done that was surprising, that you weren't prepared for, that you've learned about yourself or about the company.
I didn't think that I would be able to go in there and learn everything as fast as I did within the few months I've been there. Getting patients registered and stuff like that.
I see on your resume that you worked at Michelle's Salon as a cashier. That's generally a fast-paced job. Do you have any issues there? Were you able to keep up? You know what HIPAA is?
Mm-hmm.
You know what it stands for?
You can let me explain it.
Okay, can you just tell me what it is?
What HIPAA stands for, like the
You can either tell me what it stands for or tell me what it is. Tell me how it affects the healthcare field.
with the privacy and stuff of the patients.
All right. The last thing I want you is to describe your work style. Tell me the type of person you are, what I can expect if you're hired for this job, how I expect your work ethic, and how you interact with other employees and supervisors.
My work ethic, I work pretty well with others at a fast pace. And what was the other question?
Just tell me how you would interact with supervisors or managers.
I mean, I think I would get along with everybody fine and work pretty well.
What do you do if you don't agree with something they ask you to do?
Do it anyways, I guess I'd have to.
Depends on the situation.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't. I'm too nervous.
Well, that happens. Don't be nervous. All right. Well, I think that's everything I have to ask you. You sure y'all have any questions for me? All right. Well, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Now, you see that interview? You see the big difference in those interviews? Like, that was a grueling experience. Just imagine if you were the hiring manager, you're doing the interviewing. Like, that's a long process. That was a 5-minute video, 5-minute interview, but it probably felt like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? She didn't know anything. She wasn't prepared. She didn't seem to know herself. You know, and that stuff shined through. If you notice his mannerisms and how he was talking to her, he was basically interviewing himself because he has to ask the questions plus lead her to the answer, right? And so that's not a really good interview. That's not going to turn out well for a person like that. So if you're that kind of person who gets nervous, it's okay to be nervous, but it's not okay to be unprepared, right? And so you got to think that way. Go prepared. Take your notes with you. You know what I mean? Take your tools, your arsenal with you, because you're trying to seal this business transaction. You need this job. You know what I mean? And so don't let yourself be at a disadvantage, right? She couldn't answer anything, right? It was a hard thing. She didn't have a weakness. You know what I mean? And you see his response when she said she didn't know what her weakness is. You know, When he first started talking to her about telling about yourself or whatever, she didn't really offer any information. There was not much she said about her skills or things like that. So he had to start asking her the questions to glean out the information that he was looking for, right? And so that's how important that 30-second spiel is. You know what I mean? It'll answer so many questions. It covers so much ground from the rip. Okay, and so practice that. And the good thing about that is you can customize that to each interview. You might interview in different industries or whatnot, so you can always tailor that to those different industries. Okay. All right. So that was a horrible interview. All right. And so watch it again. If you still need to look at it and analyze that to see how you would fit in that position, do so. Right. You see how it looks. You look very dumb if you don't have answers, if you don't have a response ready. Right. Don't do that to yourself. Okay. Because we're in the business of trying to secure success. Right. And so if you notice her line in the question that he gave her, he had to ask more questions than he asked the first person, right? That's frustrating. He was obviously frustrated, right? And so you don't want to put yourself in that position, okay? All right. So we're already coming up on 1 hour and 30 minutes in this session. And so I did want to show you another video, one more video. And this interview is pretty decent. You know what I mean? It's pretty good. This person was very well prepared. This person's more experienced, and they have a lot of leadership qualities, right? And so they performed very well. They showed up, had a little portfolio with them, you know, dressed appropriately, was very confident in answering, you know, had answers for everything, and that's a great candidate, right? But this person did what I talked about earlier of not doing, divulging too much information, right? Because sometimes we answer questions that weren't asked. And then when we say stuff, we give the person another question to ask us that we weren't prepared to answer. So it's good to stay on track. If you have your questions already lined up, I want to know this, I want to know that. Well, if they say this, I'm going to say this. You know, if they ask this, I'm going to say this. That's going to keep you on track, right? And you'll notice in this interview that he gets off track because he provides some information that he didn't have to provide, right? And so be careful of that, okay? So let's watch this one real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. And I appreciate you guys for hanging in there with me.
All right, Mr. Emil, thank you for applying for the job and coming in for the interview. The first thing I would like to do is tell me a little bit about yourself and why I should hire you for this job.
Okay, well, my name is Timothy McNeil. Of course, you know that by my resume. I've spent the past 22 years serving the United States military, various jobs from management to coordinating services, supplies, logistics for certain units. And I was looking for a change of pace, so I decided to go back to school and further my education and get involved in the healthcare industry.
Well, tell me a little bit about how your education at Richmond Community College and your experience qualifies and prepares you for this job.
Well, my education at Richmond Community College gives me the classroom work or the class portion of the job skills that are needed in this particular job, and my life experience with as a first sergeant in the United States Army, I was responsible for a lot of logistical things, managing roughly up to 150 to 175 people, so that gave me good balance on managing things.
Tell me, what is your greatest strength?
My greatest strength would probably be organization and managing. That would be my greatest strength.
On the flip side, what's your greatest weakness?
My greatest weakness would be working to a time limit. I think I'm more of a task-driven person, and when I'm working within time frames or just trying to fill in time, it sort of makes it a little difficult for me.
Mission-driven.
Yes.
I got you. All right. I see on your resume that you put that you're familiar with ICD-10.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
tell me what that stands for?
That is the system which is used to coding as far as billing procedures that's used in medical office in order to bill companies on the CMS 1500 in order for the company or the doctor's office or hospital to get paid.
And they recently updated that to 10, correct?
Right. The ICD-9 is the old system, which, from what I understand, I think the United States is probably the only one that's still using ICD-9, and they're trying to transition to ICD-10, which is it's becoming a difficult task because there's a lot of people that are resistant to change.
How are you with change?
I'm great with change. I think that my military background allows me to be very flexible. I'm really, really flexible. My 22 years of military service just makes me very flexible.
I notice on your resume also it says that you will be graduating in May of 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. Well, if I were to ask people that know you, or if I call your references, tell me some of the kind of things they're going to say about you.
Very positive person, loyal, dedicated, mission focused and driven.
Tell me a little bit about your work style and how you interact with employees, with coworkers, and with supervisors and managers.
I think I work well with supervisors and managers. I'm sort of kind of the happy-go medium in between as far as the people that work beneath me and the people that work over me. As a lot of times I'm the transition between ideals, and I guess when things come down too harsh from the top, I have a way of softening them when they kind of filter down.
What do you do if a supervisor or manager asks you to do something you don't agree with?
I would first make sure that it's legal, and if it's legal, I will carry out the order task that was given to me. And if I think there's a better way, I think that after everything is said and done, if I find a quiet moment, I'll pull the person to the side and just give a recommendation of how I feel that it could be done better.
Tell me about your career goals, or if you were to receive this job, what is your plan? What's your long-term goals?
My long-term goals right now is to own my own business. If I was to get this job, I would continue to work this job and continue my education. My plans right now is to continue my education and get a bachelor's in accounting and then a master's in accounting. And I would, of course, continue to work this job. And my ultimate goal is to own my own home healthcare service business.
Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I would like to know, how did this job first become available, and what do you consider the ideal candidate for this particular job?
The job has become available because the person that did it previously has been promoted, which we are very happy with. And the ideal candidate will be someone that can come in that is detail-oriented, task-oriented, and can get immersed in our culture. Because every work culture is a little different, and learning how we do things, how we expect, what we expect, and getting along with people and the customers is a key component of this job. That's what we're looking for. Do you think you would be able to do that?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Do you have any other questions?
How long did a person work in this position before they got promoted?
They were here for 6 years, and they did an excellent job. And currently, we don't have any promotions that will be coming up. Everyone is kind of in place, and hopefully will be here long term. But you never know what happens with that. So if you take this job, the chance of getting promoted is always there, but it's not immediate. Is that satisfactory? Is that okay with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions?
No, sir, I do not have any questions.
Well, I think that's it. I appreciate you coming in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so that was a really good interview. Okay, so did you catch though the line of questioning? A lot of the questioning he was asking this gentleman was about his leadership skills, how he gets along with employees, and more importantly, his supervisors. Right? Why was he asking that? Because this guy had already talked about his 20 years of experience or whatever, 27 years experience in the military, whatever it was a lot of time he spent in the military. And a lot of that time he spent as a ranking official. So he had many people under him. He said like 175 people at one point right? So he was used to being in charge, right? And so that's an area of concern for this interviewer that if we give you the job, how are you going to correspond with me as your supervisor, right? Are we going to be fighting for authority and control? Are you able to submit, or are you going to be insubordinate? Those are issues for him. So he asked those line of questionings for that, right? But then he asked him about the system, right? So this is where I was talking about a person going down a rabbit hole, providing more information than they need to provide, right? So he starts talking about that. And so when the guy asked him, can you tell me about the ICD-10, he starts talking about it's a new program, it's an upgrade from ICD-9, and which was great. That he showed that he understood that. But then for whatever reason, he decided he's going to also say, well, I understand, that America's one of the last places to jump on board with this, and really because most people are resistant to change, right? And the interviewer was on his bounce back game, and he was quick, and he was like, so how do you do with change? How well do you handle change, right? And you can tell from that question that this gentleman was not prepared to answer that question, but he did a good job. Because like I said before, what you want to do is go back to your skills and your experience, right? So he was tripped up, but he realized that I'll just rely on my experience, So he went back to talk about his skills and his qualifications in the military or whatever, right? That he can handle change pretty well, right? And he showed how, right? But that's the danger of talking too much, Be brief, be truthful, but be brief. You don't need to say a whole bunch more than they actually ask you, okay? Because that can mess you up, all right? And then lastly, you notice that the gentleman was asking the interviewer good questions, good solid questions, which provided him some more information, right? And so it let him know that advancement for a person who's used to being in leadership, advancement is not really something you're going to see anytime soon. So it may be 5 or 6 years before we ever have a vacancy, you know what I mean? Or we just won't have a vacancy in any time in the near future, right? And that may not be ideal for a person like that who's used to being in leadership, who wants to advance quickly, right? But he asked the right question, which is appropriate for him and what he was concerned with, okay? And he asked, why is the position available, right? Because you would want to know that. What if the job was too demanding? Maybe the boss was a jerk. You know what I mean? It could be dangerous. It could be a very dangerous job, and no one wants to stay on the job because people have lost their lives or become amputated doing work or whatever, So it's good to ask those questions, okay? Always have some questions to ask, okay? All right, and so in all the questions that they asked, the rabbit hole and all that, he did pretty well. He recovered very well. But then there's one other thing I wanted to talk to you about. So with this gentleman, this is a thing that we don't want to do in an interview. We don't want to say that our long-term goal or short-term goal, it would be better to be a long-term goal, but we definitely don't want it to be a short-term goal. We don't want to say that we plan to start our own business, right? Because think about this. You're in a business transaction right now, talking about a job that you want and need, and you're telling the employer, basically, I'm going to be here as long enough to get my own business started, and then I'm hightailing up out of here to get my own money, right? Which is fine. That's the American dream, right? But the company has an American dream too, right? And then when you're talking about starting your own business, you're conflicting with that American dream that they have, right? And so you got to be careful of that. Now, the other thing is that he's talking about starting the business within the same industry. And so he just told them, I'm going to be competition, right? And so that's the danger of talking about that. You definitely don't want to talk about starting your own career if you're going to be in the same exact field. Because how does that sound? That sounds like you're a spy or something. Like you're going to use us to learn the business. You're going to advance in the company so that you can really learn how to manage this type of business, and you're going to know the inner workings of the business and all of that, from the rooter to the tutor. And then you're gonna peace out on us, and you're gonna start your own business, and you're gonna be possibly across the street being our competition. And we gave you all the ammunition to take us down and steal our business and our clients and maybe even some employees, right? You don't want to talk about that. You want to steer clear of that. Now, he said it, and you notice he did recover. He recovered. He kept saying long term, yeah, he wants to start his own business. He's going to continue working here. He's going to continue going to school. It's going to be a home-based business. He tried to clean it up. But if he would have never mentioned that, he would never have to worry about that. I'm not going to say that you should just not be honest with your person you're interviewing with, but if you know that you're going to one day be in business for yourself, you might want to just keep that to yourself, at least until you get the job. You know, you get the job and a few years in, you say, hey, you know what? I've been considering starting my own business. You know, you're probably gonna fare a lot better once they know you and they've got along with you. They've been knowing you for 5 years. They probably won't have a problem with you at that point. But in the interview, that's the worst place to do it. Okay. All right. So it's been a long session. I appreciate everybody for hanging in there with me. But it was a lot to go over, right? And so I appreciate you guys. But if you have any questions, any comments, if there's anything else that I didn't cover that you would like me to cover, let me know. Leave me a comment. Do like and subscribe, and give me a shout out, and I'll get back with you. All right. So I'm gonna let you guys go. I appreciate you guys, and we'll follow this up with some other training. But you guys be blessed.